Are you gonna stand here and pant the whole time? Hey guys, and welcome back to the STEM channel. I'm Steph, and rather than doing a topic talk this week on Wednesday, I figured I would do that Q&A video that I promised you like a week ago, and then totally lost the footage, and so was unable to do it. So here it is, here goes nothing, first Q&A, yay! So jumping right in here, on Twitter, Rob Cabrera asks, how could drone hovering technology be adapted to create a flying single-person jetpack? How much energy would that require? Well, Rob, I actually looked into it, and there is actually a company that's already doing something with drone technology. Martin Aircraft out of New Zealand. They've been working on this since, I think, 2011. I don't think that the jetpacks are actually being marketed to the public yet. I know they demoed it in Oshkosh, and I guess not a lot of people were impressed. But I did get on YouTube, and I found a video of them flying the jetpack at like 5,000 feet, which is super impressive. And this thing isn't a little tiny jetpack, it's a full apparatus that you have to stand in, and it's a beast, which I anticipate it would have to be in order to lift a human. I was actually kind of surprised this existed, but it sort of makes sense when I actually stopped and thought about it, because hovering technology like this is probably a lot more efficient and a lot less dangerous than, you know, actually like using combustion jetpacks, which is what everybody stereotypically thinks about when they see a jetpack. I'll actually include a link down below for the Martin Aircraft website so you can actually look into it more. It's actually pretty interesting when I was checking it out, so I highly encourage anybody that's interested in this kind of tech to read up on that. Moving right along. Mark at 48 North on Twitter asks, what role, if any, does philosophy play in modern science? I can only speak to this on a very limited perspective, so I'll give you my take as an engineer. In college, I actually was required to take one philosophy class, and philosophy actually plays probably a larger role than you think in engineering, especially when it comes to ethics. And I guess it makes sense that it would carry over into the scientific community for like studies that use animals as test subjects and human trials and stuff like that. But for engineering alone, yeah, philosophy plays a pretty large role in our ethics system and how we test things and stuff like that. So yeah, I actually think that there's a lot of room for philosophy and science, especially like from an ethics standpoint. So thank you for your question. Griffin Smith at The Griffin asks, what planet or star or galaxy interests you the most and why? Oh, this is hard. This is definitely like picking my favorite children. I'm gonna have to go with the Saturn system. I have loved Saturn ever since I was a little kid learning the planets. It was always the most beautiful planet to me. I know, you're not supposed to say that, but she's beautiful. And then just the surrounding moons, there's so much that we don't know about Saturn, and I think she presents so many mysteries and opportunities for exploration, and yeah, if I had to pick, it's Saturn. Sorry, Jupiter, maybe next time. So Patrick at P. Attorney asks, what was your most favorite class in school? Okay, so for high school, I would probably have to say my physics class. I had a really great teacher. I kind of knew I wanted to go into engineering at that point. He was very encouraging, and I was probably, yeah, I would have to say my high school physics class was my favorite class in high school. I absolutely loved it. And then for college, because that's a totally different beast, I would have to say that my favorite class was probably my orbital mechanics class. First of all, I just loved the subject matter. It was phenomenal. I find it so interesting. I could do that kind of stuff all day. And that class was also kind of personally a turning point for me. I had really struggled with test taking up until that point in college. I had a lot of anxiety. I had no confidence. And the very first exam, I remember there were 3 exams in that class, and the very first exam, there was a question that asked us to calculate the final altitude of this rocket that launched off of a moon, and I got a negative altitude on the test, and I panicked and I freaked out, and I was like, that's not right, and I redid the calculation using some other stupid number that I'd made up, and it turns out that it was correct, and I should have had more confidence in myself, and it was an ICBM that had crashed back into the moon, and that was one of those things. It was a turning point for me where I should have had confidence in myself. So for the last exam, there was another question where they asked us to calculate the radius of apogee. Quick rundown of orbital mechanics. There's this thing called a hyperbolic orbit, which is basically where you slingshot around a planet. And so perigee is the point in the orbit where you're closest to that object, and apogee is the point where you're furthest away. Well, if you slingshot around and you keep going, it's either at infinity or it doesn't have one, depending on who you ask. So the question asked us to calculate the orbit and its characteristics, one of which was the radius of apogee, and I figured out that it was a hyperbolic orbit, and I panicked for a second because I was like, there's no radius of apogee, and I went with my gut, and it was right. And I ended up getting a B on the exam and a B in the class, and that was really a huge turning point for me in terms of building my self-confidence and really believing that I knew what I was doing and that this was the right path for me, because I got shaken for a while there. So yeah, physics in high school, orbital mechanics in college, and I probably made that question way more complicated than you meant to, so sorry, but thank you. Next up, from Kathy Newman at CE Newman0 asks, from someone, me, starting to think about academia versus industry versus government careers in science, I'd like to know what you like or dislike about working in industry in STEM. So for me personally, I love engineering. I love what I do. I love having a concept that we drew up on paper and derived requirements for, turn into a 3D CAD model that turns into tangible hardware, and then to actually get to see it installed and fly away. That for me is the big payoff. But with every job, there's a downside, and there are less glamorous things to do, like document review and scheduling and proposal stuff like that, reviewing presentations, stuff like that is less glamorous. But I really like what I do. I like people, I like interacting with the customers, and I like really just delivering something that they want at the end of the day. That's probably the biggest payoff for me. Now, when you compare what I do to academia, there's a lot of differences. For example, when I was in college, I was a little bit more free to kind of pick what I wanted to really work on. I worked on a satellite team in college, and so I did research every year, and I was able to pick what I wanted to research, what interested me, and kind of pursue that. However, I didn't get paid anything, so that was kind of the deal. If they pay you, what they do where I work, then you do what they tell you to do. If you compare what I do to a government sciences job, for me, the thing that interests me the most is what NASA's doing. You talk about the Europa Clipper and the Titan submarine and stuff like that that's really pushing the exploration boundaries, like New Horizons and the Dawn mission. I love that stuff, the cutting edge stuff. But when you go to government sciences, the problem is the government, and it can either be your best friend or your worst enemy depending on who's paying you and who's deciding how you're going to spend your money. I think my biggest gripe, and I've said this a lot of times and this may alienate some people, is I know that NASA reports to the government, but I don't think that politicians with absolutely no scientific background should be the ones telling scientists what's important to science. I think it's great to have subcommittees that are giving money where money is needed. I just think that there should be a little bit more scientific background on those subcommittees that are making the decisions about where the money goes and what NASA's priorities are. That's just my 2 cents for what it's worth. So long story short, there are a lot of ups and downs with any job that you choose in whatever sector you choose. So you just have to decide what's tolerable to you and what gets you excited to wake up and go to work in the morning. If you wake up every morning and you're excited to do what you're doing, no matter even if it's a Monday, then yeah, you're in the right place. So just keep that in mind, I guess, would be my biggest piece of advice. And the final question of the day comes from Patricia Smith at Trish Haynes on Twitter, who wants to know what's with wearable smart textiles. Wearable tech is kind of a big thing right now. People are really starting to get into it. You're trying to incorporate rigid technologies into fabrics and stuff like that, and there's a lot of people that are working on that. Whether it's a smart fabric that knows either when to conserve heat or release heat from your body depending on which body temperature is, or if there's something that's got like tech incorporated to where you can just swipe a sleeve or something against something. I think my favorite device that I've seen in terms of wearable tech is the Bluetooth glove that you can hold like this and use it as a phone. That's the coolest thing I've seen. But outside of stuff like that, there's also, the little Fitbits that everybody's wearing nowadays and Google Glass. And I think one of the biggest challenges that people are going to have with wearable textiles and wearable tech is just making it look like something that's not hokey and out of like, what is it, Xenon Girl of the 21st Century or something that, I don't remember. It was something on Disney Channel way back in the day where they all wore like really crazy clothes and stuff like that. But people really aren't wanting to look like they're from the Jetsons, and so trying to make tech look like it just goes with an outfit is very difficult, and Google Glass really didn't achieve that when you look like a Dragon Ball Z character. But, you've got the Fitbits coming around, and I know a lot of companies are starting to present their tech and stuff like that, and that's becoming a really big priority for actually a lot of fashion companies and stuff like that. and it's really interesting to see how this is going to shape up. So for me personally, it's not something I know a whole lot about, but it's definitely something that I want to learn more about. And so I would say keep your eyes on the news, and every time they have one of those big tech conferences, keep an eye out for those, because that's where a lot of big companies are showcasing their stuff. So that's it for the first Q&A, guys. I really appreciate all your questions. They were really great questions, and hopefully I'll probably do it again sometime, depending on whether or not this video gets any views, I guess. But I had a lot of fun doing it, so thank you again for submitting your questions. In the future, if I ever do another one of these videos, I will solicit more questions with the hashtag AskStephEvs. Don't forget, there's a new episode of Twist 'em out this Saturday, so if you guys have any really cool STEM news stories that you want me to cover, go ahead and tweet them at me at @StephEvs43 on Twitter using the hashtag TwistEm, and they might show up in the video next Saturday. But that's it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Also, don't forget, I'm looking for topics to cover on the Topic Talk segments that I sometimes have on Wednesdays. So if you guys have any really cool STEM topics that you want me to cover, go ahead and tweet them at me using the hashtag Topic Talk. But that's it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you Saturday with Twist 'em.